So I'm going to tell you about an adventure that led to the creation of an open source fellowship. The story starts back in 2022. My team at AWS were working on improving the efficiency of Redis clustering. We saw customers with spiky and unpredictable workloads. Our existing strategy of uniformly distributing the data resulted in some servers running very hot with performance degradation, and some running relatively cold, which increased the overall cost because we were over-provisioned. In order to improve this strategy, we needed more metrics about how the data was being accessed. We could have built this functionality internally. At AWS, we already had an internal fork of Redis to integrate with our internal systems because Redis was a permissively licensed project. But we wanted to contribute back to the community since we wanted to provide this benefit to everyone. At the time, I was one of the 5 global maintainers of the Redis project. And part of my job was to contribute back. After getting initial alignment with the other core contributors, me and another engineer at AWS spent 4 months prototyping and developing a solution so that we would be able to get this metrics that we needed, while still minimizing performance and memory overhead. Then Redis said no. Not for any technical reason, just no. It didn't align with their roadmap. This is the risk that developers face when working with projects that are controlled by a single entity. Because at this time, the core team I talked about had a majority of contributors from Redis. Last year, Redis took a step further than rejecting contributions. They moved away from an open source license and dissolved the open governance that I was a part of. In response, the community that I was a part of went and formed Valky underneath the Linux Foundation as a vendor-neutral key-value database as an alternative to Redis. This project is governed by 6 different organizations that form the technical steering committee, each with an equal vote. Based on its merits, the group happily accepted the observability feature that I had talked about earlier, and making it available to all Valky users. Having this diverse community has enabled us to rapidly innovate. Just this year, we launched a 20% reduction in memory overhead, support for vector similarity search, new data types in the form of JSON and Bloom, and new enterprise authentication features. All of these features were led by a different organization. Let me tell you more about one of those specifically to highlight why I think community matters. For enterprise authentication, one of the initial features we asked right after we forked and created Valky was support for federated authentication, like LDAP, or integration with Active Directory, so that enterprises didn't need to manually deploy passwords to all of their Valky clusters, and could instead rely on their enterprise access control systems. This was not a feature AWS was going to build, since we have our own security ecosystem. But Valky isn't just a vendor-neutral project. An engineer from Percona took up the initiative to implement this functionality. He built upon technology AWS had already developed for async authentication, and Oracle had built to enable using Rust to build plugins. And he was able to successfully build, and we GA'd this functionality last week. And it's already being used within our community. This code is open source and will forever remain open source because the functionality we build is built by the community and for the community. My name is Madelyn Olson. I've spent a decade working with open source, building high-performance systems like Valky. I've seen firsthand that open source projects with diverse communities are able to innovate faster and have a stable license for the long term. I've seen how a CLA that allows a project to change its license is a signal to the community that the software isn't really built for them. Especially in this age of AI, where we're seeing an explosion of software being written for and by artificial intelligence, it's important to remember the lessons that we learned in hard-fought battles in the past. If you want to build an application that lasts, your core infrastructure should be vendor neutral and open source. Thank you for your time.